What is the thing that you go, man, that makes me uncomfortable, but it might be very beneficial? Take a step towards doing it today. I do not care what it is. If you know it'll bring value to your family, your faith, your fitness, or your finances, take a step today.
Being very, very transparent with your kids about things can be uncomfortable. And the reason I know that is because I can look back on how I was raised and how most people are raised. And there are certain topics that people talk about in their home, and there are certain topics that people don't talk about in their home.
I have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable because of the fact that when we sit in complacency, that's where our greatness is going to be diminished. That's going to be diminished the greatest, is when we sit in complacency.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Legends podcast with your hosts Nate, Brandon, and Brock. Remember, our insights are not direct financial advice, so consult with your financial team before making any decisions based on the topics discussed in this show.
All right, welcome back to Cash Flow Legends. We are so glad that you are here today. We always want to be very genuine in this thought first. The fact that you would choose to give us your time to hear things we have to say, driving down the road, mowing the yard, at the gym, all these places I've heard people say they listen to us, is so humbling, and we do not take that lightly. So we really appreciate that, and we're so thankful for everybody listening and sharing and giving us comments. It really is a blessing for all of us. So guys, great to see you this morning. We're all kind of rolling into the summertime. Okay. So Nate, I know you just had something really cool that you got to do recently. So what was that?
Well, I had the honor and the privilege of being asked to fill in for my pastor at my church. For those who don't know, I have a ministry background. I did youth and music ministry for a long time, and then I actually pastored a church for 3 years. But we've just been plugging into a local church the last few years, me and my family, and he was going to be out and asked me to fill in for him. That was a really enjoyable experience for me. I texted him and after it was over, and I said, "Man, thank you so much. I needed that."
Very cool. All right, Brock, you told me this morning before we got on that you were recovering. uh, I laugh because y'all know my background as a middle school principal. I spent time around teenagers for a long time. So what were you recovering from, Brock?
I think I've been recovering from a sinus infection. I was away from you guys and went to church camp for a little while with rising ninth graders, and I just thought it'd be a good idea to come back sprinting as fast and as hard as I could. And now, a week afterwards, I think I paid the price. So we're making our way back up.
Brock spent a week with incoming ninth graders. Nate has been preparing for the opportunity to lead that church and that sermon for over a month, maybe 2 months, if I'm thinking right. I don't know if the Lord just has a sense of humor for business partners or what, but I also got asked as an incoming deacon to speak to, it's called Heritage House, but it's really like a kind of like a retirement home, and deliver just an encouraging message there on a Sunday night as well, the same day that Nate did his sermon that morning. And it really ties in really well to our thoughts today, guys. And I'm going to ask you this, and I need you to go back and really think about it. Nate, when you were asked to lead that service, the very beginning, without going into a ton of detail, you had been out of ministry for a while. So was there a hesitation of, oh crud, I don't know if I really want to do this yet?
When he asked me, I said, "I will pray about it." I did not
Okay.
give him an answer. I did not give
Okay.
him an answer right away.
Okay.
The funny thing is, though, within a couple of days, I just felt like the Lord was just moving my heart in a direction. And so within a couple of days, I just gained a lot of confidence and really felt led to tell him, "Yes, I will do that."
Y'all are just playing right into the plot of where I'm going with this. All right. So Brock, I've gotten heard hear a little bit about your story also in this with the youth, but somewhere along the way, go back to the beginning, because I think you did camp the year before too. Before you'd ever done camp, did somebody push you out of your comfort zone to entertain the idea of doing this? Or were you like, I'm gung ho, I'm going to camp with incoming ninth graders. That's what I'm here to do.
No, absolutely not. It was last year was my first year of doing camp. And one of my buddies, we were having breakfast one morning, and he was like, "Man, what do you think about going to camp?" Because we were taking a record number of kids, and I was like, "Yeah, probably not." But like Nate, I said, "You know what? I'll just pray about it." And he kept bugging me for weeks Like, hey, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? I'm like, oh, I'm just praying about it still. I haven't got an answer yet. And the head pastor of our church takes me to breakfast and he's like, so I hear you've been praying about it for a little while. You need an answer. And he goes, here's your answer. You need to go. And I was like, and he's like, you just live too much life not to share that with others, especially in that year they were incoming eighth graders. And I was like, okay, well, what is it gonna hurt? So I ended up going and it was an awesome decision.
We know this. When we get outside of our comfort zone, we often think it's because we're needed for something. And when we get done with it, it was actually often something that we needed for his kingdom. I look at what we get to do right now, just hitting record, just three guys talking about something we're passionate about and we love, as an opportunity to help people get outside of their comfort zone. If I were to describe what we do more than anything, is that sometimes we're already there and they're coming full-fledged sprinting. They're like, I'm getting away from this comfort zone. I was already making headway to do it. And sometimes it's like a little tiptoe. They're like, I don't really know if I want to do this. This is uncomfortable. And we, like your pastor Brock, depending on the relationship and how long we've known each other, and the cool thing about what we get to do, guys, is the relationship gets pretty personal pretty quick, because the moment somebody opens up all their best thinking to this point in front of you, they're saying, I'm willing to be in conversations about what I've done to this point and see if there's better possibilities, which requires getting uncomfortable, because most people aren't walking around down the street going, hey, Brock, hey, Nate, hey, Brandon, I'd love to show you all my financial decisions. Some I'm proud of, some I'm not, and let you evaluate them and give me some insight. They're just not. And so the point of the conversation today really is this idea that I believe the world conditions us to believe that getting uncomfortable is a bad thing. And what I want to encourage everybody to lean into when you're listening today, and this is, you guys know I love actionable steps. When you hear us discuss this, and you think about what would make you the most uncomfortable, that's either been laid on your heart or previous conversations or experiences you've had, whatever that thing is, and it'll come to your mind, guys. What is the thing that you go, man, that makes me uncomfortable, but it might be very beneficial? Take a step towards doing it today. I do not care what it is. If you know it'll bring value to your family, your faith, your fitness, or your finances, take a step today. I'll share something that I've done recently later on, but what jumps out to you guys in your mind when you think about that conditioning of the world and not being uncomfortable?
Well, you really have to evaluate how you're operating and what you're doing right now and ask yourself, am I following the masses or am I doing something different? And like, especially as men who are leading families, me and Brandon both have kids and are married. So when we
Not
look at how
together.
we operate in our household, not together, when we operate in our household, we have to look at how we're leading and ask ourselves, are we doing what the masses are doing? Or are we doing something different? And I think for me, I don't want to steal your answer, Brandon, but for me, that tends to be one of the hardest things is leading your family in a different direction. Being very, very transparent with your kids about things can be uncomfortable. And the reason I know that is because I can look back on how I was raised and how most people are raised. And there are certain topics that people talk about in their home, and there are certain topics that people don't talk about in their home. Ironically, one of the things that most people don't talk about in their home is money and faith. You know, those are two important aspects of our lives that are often not brought up in the household.
Nate, I want to come back to this, but Brock may respond to this inside of his thought processes. So Nate mentions looking at the masses and what they're doing and seeing if we're doing something different. Brock, when you hear that based off of getting uncomfortable, how does your brain kind of process that from your day in, day out interactions with ninth graders to successful 30-year-olds that are millionaires?
Yeah. I think that the first place that my mind always goes to is complacency and how easy that is. Like, if you know anything about me, you know how regimented and disciplined and oddly just weird my routines are or my rituals are in the things that I do.
Weird,
And
weird, not weird to us,
correct. But
but
to the
weird to the
average person,
masses. Yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah. Yeah.
And so recently, I had an individual come to me and they were like, I feel like you might be hiding something like a crazy addiction or something that you have going on because of how disciplined you are. It's funny because I don't, but it was more of I have those things in place because I know that being lazy is the easiest thing in the world for me. Like if somebody were to say, "Hey Brock, all you need to do is lay on the couch, watch TV, and play video games," man, I would eat that up. Like that would be one of the best days ever. But I know that where I'm wanting to go, I can't do that. And I have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable because of the fact of when we sit in complacency, that's where our greatness is going to be diminished. I don't mean to use the same word twice, but that's going to be diminished the greatest is when we sit in complacency.
So you you made me think about something that I posted on Twitter before, and it's this idea that everybody has addiction at some level, and it just depends on if it's healthy or unhealthy. And I think what your addiction might be is you're addicted to discipline. You're addicted to structure. Like there's nothing wrong with that.
You both are making a great point there, Brock, because you kind of alluded to you know where you want to go. And so, a guy that I've really started enjoying a lot of stuff he posts on social media, he said this the other day, and it hit me right in the stomach. I was telling you guys before we hit record, I'm not really pleased with my summer structure and routine. And when you've had structure and you have consistency of showing up, and you are aware of it and what we call the 4 F's from your dad: faith, family, fitness, and finance, and you get off track of that a little bit, you recognize it quicker. Okay. And when you recognize it quicker, you go, I need to do something about it. But he says this, and this is strong. He basically said, I'm paraphrasing, the greatest lies that are ever told that we believe are the ones that we tell ourselves. And here's the real reality of this. If you don't have accountability in your life somewhere or multiple places, what happens is you keep telling yourself that lie and you keep believing it. And when you tell yourself a lie and you believe it, let me give you an example. I'm going to work out 3 days a week and I don't go one of the three. And I know that's better for my faith, family, fitness, and finance. And I don't tell anybody. I just believe the lie that I told myself. And it's easier to do it the next time and the next time. And this is relevant in anything we do in life. So maybe we should reframe what I said earlier on action steps. What lie have you been telling yourself that you continue to believe that you want to change today? We do not talk to, I'm going to go to the men here. We do not talk to men ever that show up and go, I don't want to be better. There's always in the background the potential of leading better, living better, bringing more value at a higher level. And that's what brings most people to the conversations that we get to have, which is such a humbling thing that they bring that to the table. So Nate, I saw you smirk. What are you gonna say?
Yeah, so it's funny that you mentioned this because it actually leads into or is very connected to part of my sermon on Sunday, which was ironically somehow Garrett Gunderson got worked into my sermon, and I mentioned and connected the win then play philosophy. And what I equate that to is if we have a game that we're going to go play and we have the ability to create the rules for that game, we're going to create the rules that are favorable to us, not necessarily our opponent, because nobody wants to be a loser. Like nobody shows up in life going, I just want to lose. I just want to be an absolute loser in everything that I do. Like that's not the intent. Like you said, when we have often men who show up, they don't necessarily show up saying, yeah, I just want to keep losing. Like they're looking for ways that they can create the rules for themselves. And if we have the ability, we know that there are certain things that we can implement, there are certain rules that we can create that will make us better. Then we have to ask ourselves, do you want to win or do you want to lose? At the end of the day, like that's the question. Do you want to win? You want to lose? And you look at all these different little situations that pop up throughout the day and all the decisions that we get to make related to those situations. And we can ask ourselves, do I want to win in this situation or do I want to lose in this situation?
I'm gonna add a side note to that, and then Brock jump in because you already said it earlier. Brock and Nate just talked about winning is one of the things I think we all love to do the most is help people get clarity on why they want to win, and then we help them figure out how with the resources, the skills, and the abilities that they've been given. Sometimes that they don't even know that they really have, and they need an outside perspective to ask questions and engage with them and encourage them to continue learning and getting uncomfortable. Here's something that I've gotten more and more comfortable in. If somebody comes to us and we get to work together and it's a good fit, and yes, we don't work with everybody, okay, because we want it to be a good fit because we're going to be hanging out for a long, long time. I've started asking them, what are you reading right now? If they tell me they don't read, I get real lovingly blunt. If you want to grow and you want to do the things you just told me you want to do, put a book on your list right now and tell me what you got from it in X amount of time. because that cliche saying out there, leaders or readers or whatever, it's true, guys. Talk to anybody who's successful at whatever realm of success means to you that you want to emulate in some way. They're reading and they're applying. Brock, what are your thoughts on that? And getting uncomfortable altogether.
I think it's very important, first off. Second is, I got a couple things that I'm thinking through, but, I had a gentleman come into my practice the other day. He got referred in, he wants to start working, he wants to start doing the whole life policy. But right up front, some of his first words were, "Oh, well, everything's on autopilot right now, and I'm just doing my job, and this is, it's easy. But so and so recommended that I do one of these policies and how he's using it. So I wanted to see about it too." And then when it came time to talk about the policies, it was, "Well, that doesn't work. No, and then I finally asked, like you, Brandon, "Well, okay, well, what are you reading?" He said, "Oh, well, I'm in the entertainment industry. They frown upon us reading." And I I just kind of laughed at it. And thinking on it now, I'm kind of like, that has created a new criteria in my life of, I don't really want to work with people who are just on autopilot, because autopilot creates complacency really quickly. One of the things that we come across a lot, we talk about the fact of, like, you need to create your own rules and boundaries and how that works. Well, some people might say, "Well, I can't do that. I can't create my own rules. I can't do that." Well, yeah, you can. And
You already have a set of rules if you haven't created them. They're
yeah,
somebody else's.
exactly. And so, those rules could be as simple as, hey, who do you talk to? Who do you let into your life? Who do you not talk to? Who do you not let into your life? What are the things? When do you wake up? When do you go to bed? And, as you begin to put those things into play, you're going to be able to make the rules around how you grow your life. Like, I have a lot of guys in my life that, their rules are on Friday nights, it's date. I don't care what's going on, but we do date night. Some of us, for me, for example, I don't take meetings on Saturdays. Like, I don't even talk business on Saturdays. Unless for some odd reason you get me on a whim, there's no way that I'm going to go out of my way and talk to somebody about business. If you can set these rules for yourself, what ends up happening is you learn how to set boundaries from those rules, and then it helps you train people. And this might sound weird, but it's going to help you train people on how to treat you. And most people don't realize that you can do that. And it's not this whole, "Oh, I'm going to manipulate everything that you do towards me." It's, no, you're just setting a boundary and understanding, like, hey, if somebody doesn't treat you right, or if they don't value you, nobody says you have to keep talking to them. That's something I had to learn early on. Being a young guy who had a lot of success, a lot of people wanted, if I got introduced to them, but then we started talking, they would belittle me. Okay, that's no problem. We don't have to talk. I don't care. There's hundreds of other thousands of people that would like to talk to me. And it's the same in anybody's life. We just have to learn how to set those rules and boundaries in place. And that in itself will begin to help us start to grow in ourselves, to put ourselves in those uncomfortable spots, because we're always wanting something more, but wanting something more in a good way, not in a bad way.
Nate, you got something?
Well, when we're just talking about reading, Brandon, you know this. When I'm reading, it unlocks my creativity. So if you're not feeling very creative, I would challenge you, go read something. If you don't know what to read, find somebody who's where you want to be and ask them what you need to read. Because I promise you, they've got a list of books that they can send you.
Yep.
And something I'd add to that is read the book.
Yeah.
Don't just ask for it and then not do anything with it.
So I did this years ago. The first year that Nate and I reconnected, and then we read Becoming Your Own Banker going into 2018, I went from being a non-reader, and then Nate said, read Becoming Your Own Banker. I got right with the Lord. Alcohol was no longer in my life, so shocker, I could think more clearly. I began reading, and that year we read 60 plus books in a year, which was I hadn't read that many books my entire life. And I read it in a year. The number doesn't matter as much as the intention. I can tell you that was just kind of a goal of how many could I read that year. So that became kind of my consumption, what I was consumed by. But I was applying it. Average book size is like 320 pages. Even if you just read 10 pages a day, just do the math on that. You're going to get a lot of information. But I would even say for 6, 7 year journey now, be more focused on how you're processing and applying the information. Even if you read one book and it gave you a ton of great information and you reread some of it and you decided the action steps you're going to take from that book first before you start another book, that you're making progress towards something that's more impactful than what you've been doing. So as you guys were talking, I was reminded of in Proverbs, I think it's Proverbs 6, 6 through 11, where it talks about the ant and how the ant is always preparing. But I want to just touch these few little verses real quick. It says, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. Poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. So what I get out of that immediately, guys, is that we are on this earth for a purpose. And if we are here, it's to work and to get better at how we work, why we work, when we work, who we work for, who we work with, to not be a sluggard. Because if we agree poverty is a problem in America, now I know it's not a problem in comparison to other countries, but in America, if we were to evaluate poverty, and I've had many conversations with people who've experienced poverty, there's a scarcity mindset if they've made it out that they will tell you about. And this is proven. Somebody that lives in poverty, they get $100, they spend it as fast as they can because they're afraid somebody's going to take it from them. It's as simple as that. So there has to be diligent effort, like an ant that's just really getting clear. An ant knows why it's doing what it's doing. It's ingrained in it, and it's going to always be moving things from here to here with a purpose, with a bigger purpose. Maybe kind of like we have as individuals, for a bigger purpose. Okay, we were created for something more than just what matters to us. Always working for something. When we recognize that, then we get to really start diving into what is that purpose for us individually. A big piece that we see for men a lot of times is they don't have other men around them pushing them to get out of their comfort zone and pushing them to think about what they're called to do beyond go to bed, wake up, go to work, go to bed, wake up, go to work. They don't have those conversations. So when they start having them with us, we get to have those daily. They start realizing how uncomfortable they are in the life they're living, because they're like, I'm not made to just do this. I'm like, no, you're not. Your work is a part of who you are for a bigger purpose of whose you are. And simple as that. So guys, I've got a couple other thoughts, but what jumps to your mind there?
Well, we're talking about poverty. It reminded me of a few different tweets that I put out over the years, broke versus poor. And the first one is, being broke means you lack money in your pocket. Being poor means you lack abundance in your mind. Another one is, you're broke because you don't have money. You're poor because you don't believe you can have money. Broke is a financial issue. Poor is a mindset issue ultimately. It's behavior and mindset. If you're broke, it's probably because of your behavior. If you're poor, it's probably because of your mindset.
I'm going to read the privilege that we get to have these kind of conversations. I'm going to read you something from somebody that is a newer member of our practice of ULC. And the whole idea of our thought process conversation today is the willingness to get uncomfortable. And the only way that anyone is going to choose to get uncomfortable is if they recognize what they're doing, they think they could be doing more or better, or they're frustrated by the way they've been doing it that hasn't been working. And the reality is that a lot of times people we get to work with come to us sadly because they've experienced some trials and tribulations that they thought they were prepared for that they really weren't. Okay, a lot of times they happen and then they go, man, my plan wasn't as solid as I thought it was, or I have no plan at all. So I got this the other day, and this is the kind of people we love working with. He said, some of this has been more difficult than I anticipated. Now, he's already begun our process. He and his family have gone through a lot of the steps that we go through. I just need to keep in mind this is a marathon, not a sprint mentality. He said, and this guy is super humble. So when he says this, I believe it. He says, not to sound arrogant, but for a while now, I'm normally one of the smarter ones in the room for the groups that I come into contact with on a daily basis. He said, but this process has revealed how much I don't know. It's humbling experience, but it makes me want to try and learn all I can. I feel like I'm a lifetime behind. These are the kind of people that we love working with, because this is how Nate and I feel. 7 years later, we keep getting around people who know more than us. That is a good thing. But the world teaches you that is not a good thing, traditionally, because the minute I step into a room, let's say there's 5 other people in the room and I step in and every one of them are more successful than me in their thinking, their behavior, their mindset, their all the things, money, whatever. I got to really step outside my comfort zone to do that, because what do we like to think? I mean, we're all selfish beings at heart. I like to think I'm smarter than anybody in the room. I like to think I'm more athletic than anybody in the room. I like to think this, that, or the other, because that is how we are wired. So the humility has to be full on force to step in a room where you know you're not that and go, what can I learn here? Guys, what are you thinking?
I think that off of what you were saying, a lot of it is, on one hand, it's always, I should be the best in the room. I need to be, on top. And then the other side is when you do get in those rooms, the world is going to tell you, you don't belong there. The reality is, no matter what room you're going into, you're not, I mean, who cares? But you need to be in a room where people are further along than you and you get to learn more. And something we haven't talked about yet on this is, there's a concept out there of easy hard. If things are easy now, they're going to be hard later. But if you go ahead and do the hard things now, life will be a whole lot easier later.
Kind of like those ants.
That's right.
They're doing the
That's
hard
right.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think something else that I thought of, Brandon, that as you're reading that scripture, I've always left it as, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands, and poverty will come upon you like a thief. I always overlooked the whole scarcity part. And that piece right there is one of the most powerful things that you can talk about and get a hold of for somebody is the scarcity piece, because when you're in a scarcity mindset, you don't make the same decisions as you do as somebody who's in abundance. And that comes from one of the biggest pieces that I have. It's one of those things I wish I could just bash into people's heads. Like, you don't need to get a rate of return on a certain amount of money. Like, I wish people would understand what it would feel like to have money in the bank that just sits there. I've said it before, like, just having six figures, right, is way too much. What somebody would say to me is like, bro, you have way too much in the bank. I love having that sit there because that gives me peace of mind to know no matter where I go, no matter what I do, I'm going to be okay for this amount of months. And when you're in a space of, oh man, I can barely come up with, 2 months of reserves, you're hoping that you continue to have a paycheck from your job and you're trying to chase rates of return because you're hopefully just out of nowhere going to be rich one night. And then you're also trying to fight off all this debt that you have. If you just did the hard thing and got over yourself and just saved a little bit of money, that scarcity mindset, I promise, will start to go away and you'll start making way better decisions when it comes to your money.
There's nothing wrong with people who want to be diligent and track their rates of return on their growth of their money and stuff like that. But I will say personally, there's a whole lot of peace when you're not waking up every day wondering what your rate of return was on your money. I don't track that stuff anymore because it's not tied to the market the way it used to be. For me personally, because of all the scarcity that I dealt with for years and years and years. When there was a rate of return that was attached to my money that I was actively tracking, I was just going with the ebb and flow. My emotions went with the rate of return. It's almost kind of the same as like watching the news. So like when I used to watch the news, I used to know what I had to be scared of. But once I stopped watching the news, I don't know what I'm supposed to be scared of now. So there's a lot of peace of mind when you hit the off switch, so to speak, when it comes to what the traditional world tells you you need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
So, Brandon,
Go ahead.
last,
No, go ahead.
it can't get out of my mind for some reason. I feel like somebody needs to hear it, but get out of the calculators, bro.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's good.
If you
All right.
can't get out of the calculators, you're not gonna go anywhere.
This theme has come up a lot lately, and we'll kind of tie it in a bow with getting uncomfortable. If you're not willing to get out of the calculator, maybe becoming uncomfortable and thinking about it differently is where you start. Okay. Because you can't spend rate of return, and rate of return, if it's not bringing value to your life daily, can't create peace of mind. It may, if it's a big number this week, but it's the same roller coaster when it's going downhill also. So there's a great book, one of the first books that Nate and I read early on, called The One Thing. And The One Thing talks about the halo effect. The world will condition you to believe that showing up 80% of the time is related to consumption. Just think about it. Here's a great way to track it. How much of your daily, weekly, monthly activity is related to consuming or producing, creativity or paying for a feeling? Okay. That's a great place to start. And then start looking at what you can do that makes you uncomfortable But I'm going to use this as an example. So my daughter takes voice lessons, and I've always wanted to be able to play the guitar. You see the guitar in the background. So finally I reached out, I got uncomfortable, and I reached out and asked if her teacher would teach me guitar. What the one thing talks about is this halo effect of, like, when we take a step in the right direction and we start doing something new that's uncomfortable, it's impossible until we lived 6 months, a year and a half down the road and look back to see the beneficial halo effects of that one move. So I'm going to use the guitar as an example. So guys, did you know that the guitar is one of the only things you do instrument wise, or in life really, that engages both sides of your brains simultaneously? Lots of instruments do that. So think about it. I'm strumming a guitar. I need to try to stay in rhythm. I'm memorizing where my fingers need to go for each, positioning. I've got a beat. I've got words if I'm trying to learn how to sing. Both sides of your brain's being engaged. What I've learned in this process, because my teacher teaches like we teach breaking down people's money decisions, she teaches the instrument that way, about how there are these truths in everything we do in life related to rhythm, momentum, beat, timing. Most people are living out of timing, out of beat, out of rhythm, and they know it's not producing the music they want for their life. The halo effect for me, 6 months into this, or however many months into this, is that I get less wound up. Because when I start getting wound up, one of the things I can do is just pick up the guitar, and it kind of takes over that other side of my brain I don't use very often, because I normally think with one side of my brain the most because of how I'm wired. It takes that over and it kind of settles me, because you guys that don't know me well listening to this, I can get a little bit obsessive about things in an unhealthy way if I don't watch it. Lots of times, if anybody listening just takes that one step today and then the next step tomorrow and the next step tomorrow, you'll get 3 months down the road and look back and go, holy moly, I didn't even think about the benefits of what that choice would do for the other areas of my life. Maybe it's your marriage, maybe it's your health, maybe it's your mindset. So get uncomfortable in something that you know will be good for you. That is my encouragement and challenge for today. Guys, you got any parting thoughts?
Do the hard thing.
Do it first.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's
Read a
good.
book.
Yep.
And if you have trouble with it, find somebody that'll do it with you.
Yeah. And on that note, one of the things that Nate and I and Brock love to do is give book recommendations, because it's been so vital in our lives. Leave a comment, send us a message. Say, hey, I'm at this point in my life right now. What recommendation would you send me that's been beneficial to you? I promise you, between Nate, Brock, and I, we can at least come up with one, and probably way more than you want. And we'd love to do that. So Nate, why don't you send us off?
Well, wealth is created, as Garrett Gunderson says, through conversation. But we like to say it's also created through certainty, control, and efficiency, but that doesn't happen without liquidity. So if you want to be a cash flow legend, figure out how to leverage capital, and you can do that too.
Appreciate you guys. Y'all have a good one.